And I was like, "Are you okay?" And he didn't say anything. And I put my hands on his arms and I said, "Have I changed? Like, I love you." I said, "The only thing that is different about me is I don't believe in the same God that you do. That's it."
Welcome to Voices of Deconversion. We share the inspirational stories of deconversion told by former Christians who are now atheist or agnostic. Our stories remind us we're in it together. They encourage us as we discover who we are and help us to embrace who we become. Now here's Steve with today's guest.
Welcome everyone to episode 59. My guest today is Timoree Branson. Timoree lives in Scottsdale, Arizona. She was raised Catholic as a little girl, and when she got a little bit older, her parents ended up going to a non-denominational church. She was also saved at a very young age. As she grew older and into her adult years, she would spend multiple days during the week at church. Church was everything for her. It consumed a lot of her life. She was very involved in church, even up until about a year or two ago. So this is all very fresh for her. We talk about so many different subjects. We talk about mental illness. We talk about substance abuse. She's able to find the good in her past or Christianity, in the church experiences that she's had, and hang on to those. A couple of themes that I really found to be very, very strong in this interview, and I just absolutely loved. One was on relationships, how to parent as a non-Christian, how to be a spouse, friendship. You know, the value of those relationships, and just the value of having good people in your life. But what always impresses me is the courage that people have when they're going through this unwillingly. Her relationship with her children was at stake. Her marriage was at stake. It seems to me that the stakes are raised to the highest level that they can be in life when someone's deconverting. Everything that matters most in life is at risk, and you can't stop it from happening. And that is a scary, scary feeling to have. Timoree finds comfort in music and listening to podcasts, and most of all in the relationships in her life. I was so grateful to connect with Timoree and to be able to have this conversation with her. Her story is an inspiring one. Now here's my conversation with Timoree Branson. Well, I am happy to be joined today by Timoree Branson. Timoree, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I'm really honored.
Yeah, so there's a lot of questions I have for you because just in our email exchanges, there's so many things that have come up. But let's just go ahead and start with kind of your upbringing. How did Christianity influence you growing up?
Well, I was raised Catholic until I was about 8 years old. I was baptized in the Catholic Church. I had my first Holy Communion. But right around when I had my first Holy Communion, my mom and my stepdad, so my parents divorced when I was about 2. Then my mom remarried when I was 4. And so I grew up with my stepdad, and I called him Dad. But they got saved. And
when you were about 4, you said?
When I was 8, they got saved.
Okay.
And so that's when we started going to a non-denominational Bible church here in, I'm in Phoenix or Scottsdale, Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was actually I went to Christian school. And I remember my first grade teacher was Mrs. Jackson. And I remember accepting Christ when I was 6 years old with Mrs. Jackson. And so that was my life. I grew up in, it was just my parents always did Bible studies. We were at church, 2 times on Sundays, Wednesday nights. And then I went to Christian school most of my life. My parents couldn't really afford it. So I went to public school and Christian school, but I always went back to the same Christian school. And then my last 3 years of high school, I was at a Christian school. And
okay. So you were back and forth in Christian school, out of Christian school.
Yeah, every other year. Yeah. So it was first grade Christian school, second grade Catholic, third grade Christian, fourth grade public, fifth grade Christian, sixth grade public, seventh.
Was this something you wanted, or was it something your parents were pulling you out to put you into the Christian school, and then
It's not really what I wanted. My mom was always just like, oh, you get to make new friends. And I loved being at the Christian church because it was smaller. And, when I went into, so seventh and eighth grade, I went to two Christian schools. And then, and mostly it was like a financial thing. And when I went to
okay,
my freshman year, I went to public high school, and I thought I was going to be there, but it was really, really difficult for me to be there. And I wasn't thriving. And so I went back to Christian school, and I did finish like 10th, 11th, and 12th grade at a Christian school.
mm-hmm.
But in high school, like I grew up with not listening to secular music. I mean, which is pretty common it was for me.
Non-denominational. Mm-hmm.
Non-denominational. I mean, and like when I was in high school, I was only allowed to go to church events, school events. I went on choir tours, mission trips, camps. That was like my life. And then, yeah, that's all I did.
Well, you said that it was difficult for you in public school. In what way?
I just felt like, well, I didn't know these kids. I was like an outsider.
Yeah.
But I do remember being in sixth grade, and I'll never forget this because I was so traumatized. And they showed a video on evolution.
Oh.
And I was so traumatized. I was sitting there going, I can't believe they believe this. I cannot believe like this. What are they teaching? Like I was definitely traumatized. I was like,
Wow.
we can't be from like, cavemen. And like, I just was Neanderthals. And like my mind was just all mixed up.
Wow.
And I went home, and, like my parents were like, no, God created us. This is just evolution. They have to teach it in the public schools. They can't teach about the Bible and how God created the earth. And I was like, and I grew up believing like that the word of God, that the Bible was holy, that it was literal,
Yeah.
absolute truth. Honestly, like I believed that until about a year ago.
Wow. That is so amazing. That's so recently.
That it is very recent. Like like there are still days when I'm so sad.
Yeah.
And I can't even say like, oh, I'm sad, because I'm just sad. I'm just sad that I don't know I don't like to should myself or say like it should have been different. I mean, I'm really grateful for my life and how it turned out. But I was really mad for like a long time because I was like, I felt really stupid.
Yeah.
Like I was like, how could I have believed this for so long? Like for so long, like with my whole heart, and like, oh,
Yeah.
but I believed it because that was my world. I was in mom's groups. I was in Bible studies.
Yeah. It
You know,
was
when I
your
got,
community, and it was from the day you were born. You were born into it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and you're not alone in that. Like, not only are there lots of people who deconverted, later in life when they started families, but and obviously there's a whole world of Christians that are still believing it. So
Yeah.
it's
And
hard the second guessing and the wondering what could have been, or thinking how could I have been hoodwinked, or how could I have believed this for so long? That's seems to be a
yeah,
really normal part of this process.
I think so. But I love
It's
that
hard.
what Marlene Winnell said. It was like, I'm not stupid. Am I ignorant? Yes. And I don't even think that's a bad thing. It just means that I didn't know. Like I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I think so my brother was born when I was 10, and he deconverted like way before me, and he lives in New York. And I was going through a family thing in 2014, and I was talking to my brother, and I was like, can you please pray for me? Can you please pray for me? I need prayer. And he said, well, I don't pray anymore. And I was like, what do you mean you don't pray anymore?
And this was
He,
2014.
this was 2014. He says, well, I'm an atheist. And I was like, what? You're
Wow.
what? And I was like, okay. And then he said, but I will send you, my loving thoughts. And I was like, okay. And I was stunned. I
Yeah.
wasn't upset and I remember thinking like, how can anyone live without the hope of Christ? And like the hope in God?
Yeah.
Like, I just was like, how can anybody, like, this was, um, I just couldn't even imagine life without
And you
prayer,
can't.
without
Yeah.
fasting and praying and tithing. And like, I couldn't imagine that.
You can't when you're a Christian. I mean, I have been corresponding with an old friend of mine recently, and I just don't think they can wrap their mind around existence without some greater purpose and without that greater plan or without that narrative. Like it blows their
Mm-hmm.
mind in a way. Like they can't even think beyond that. Like
No,
kind of what you're
I
describing.
couldn't. I couldn't. And I remember, I guess it was like about 3 years later, almost 3 years later, having a conversation with my brother. And I wouldn't say I was like, it was at the beginning of the coming undone. I call it unraveling, coming undone, because I literally feel like it's just been this um, intense process where like sometimes it happens super abruptly, sometimes it's a little bit. But I remember crying on the way to work, talking to him on the phone, and I was like, what in the world were we taught? Like, it was at the very beginning. I was like, what were we taught? I was like, what happened to us? And he like, I'm like, how do you live? Like, how do you function? And he said, he said, we were indoctrinated. And I said, okay. And he said, I have found a lot of solace in science. And I said, okay. But I couldn't even understand that
Yeah.
until like months later. Yeah, so that was like the fall of 2017 when that took place,
So this
that
is
conversation with my brother.
yeah, fall of 2017.
Yeah, so something
Gosh.
happened in the, I mean, I don't know if we want to talk about like my adult life in Christianity or,
Whatever you want to talk about, whatever you think is most
well,
pertinent. Yeah.
yeah, I think all of it is. I know for me that I went from a really strict upbringing to more like, I don't want to say like a liberal Christian, but I guess that's what people would like label the kind of Christianity. But so
Hmm.
I grew up in this, after my husband and I got married, we got married in 1992. We moved to Tucson. Oh, we went to an evangelical church for a while. And that's when I met this really great person who is still, we became best friends and we're still best friends to this day. Um, and then we were at that church for like 2 years, and then we moved to Tucson. And so when I was in Tucson, our neighbors invited us to their church, which was an Assemblies of God church, which
Okay.
was like really amazing to me at the time. I mean, that's where they like did praying in tongues. They did even like the ones where like somebody in the church would like speak in tongues and then somebody would interpret it, and like laying of
Yeah.
hands, being slain in the spirit, like all this really like exciting. It was exciting to me. It was like very like moving. And
Like God is
um
moving and God is doing things in this
yeah,
church.
like
Yeah.
this is like, well, and also growing up, I grew up under the theology of like speaking in tongues was from like the devil, was like not.
That's what your
And
parents believed?
well, I don't know if it was my parents or like
Just the
the
church that you went
church
to.
in
So,
that I went to. Like, they didn't
okay.
practice those gifts of the Holy Spirit, I guess
Okay,
you
so
would
just
say.
just to summarize, so up until the point you were about 8 years old, you went to a Catholic church?
Yes, I went to
And did
Catholic
that
church.
influence you in any way that you remember, or were you too young to really be impacted too much?
I remember really liking it. I loved that. I loved certain things like going to on Christmas Eve to midnight mass. That was always really beautiful. The tradition was really beautiful. I loved saying, peace be with you and also with you, like there are certain things that I really enjoyed the tradition of it, but I think I was too young. But I mean,
Yeah.
when my parents got saved and I had it was I had lived in a very strict household, and it was just
Okay.
like, you know, I learned really young that I needed to obey or I was going to be punished. And, my parents would before I would have, a spanking, they would open the Bible, read the verse, spare the rod, spoil the child.
Just to
And
reinforce the reason they're doing it.
yeah. And it was just
Was that traumatic
obviously,
for you?
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Apparently that's good. Of course, I didn't know. I know that my parents did the best that they knew how, and they were just doing what they were told to do.
Yeah.
So my mom and my stepdad divorced when I was about 18. So, and I don't have a relationship with my stepfather
Okay.
anymore. But I'm very close with my mom, and we've had conversations about it, and she's, apologized. We've cried about it. And I really do think as a parent myself, I know that she was really doing the best that she could at the time,
Yeah, and it's the culture
you
back
know?
then too. I mean, that was socially acceptable. Now spanking is very controversial, or physical punishment of any kind of children is much more controversial now.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I was spanked when
absolutely.
I was a
Yeah.
child too, and I think it affects every kid differently. You know what I mean? Like on
Yeah.
like more severely or less severely, and yeah,
I just thought, I just knew it was almost, I just remember being a kid, being afraid to do anything other than be obedient. And I wasn't, there were certain things when I was doing chores, I had to do it with a happy heart. And, just
a lot of
um,
pressure.
a lot of pressure to have be happy and joyful. And I mean, that really is my nature.
Mm-hmm.
But my mom would sometimes send me to my room and say, don't come out until you're happy,
Oh my gosh.
because I was just like, oh gosh, so it was just kind of strange, weird, but I can understand it. Sometimes, our little one, she's just will whine, and I'd be like, I want to send her to her room till
Yeah.
she comes out happy,
Yeah.
but, I mean, that's I get it. There are times when I'm just like, oh, okay. But I mean, that was really I mean, I don't ever remember having tantrums as a kid or breaking,
Or being so horrible that you needed to be told, like, you better do this with a happy heart, and you better go to your room, and you have a bad attitude.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Or just oh, yeah. But
Wow.
so it was just hard, and being so secluded. I mean, the only secular music I remember listening to was Barbara Streisand, because my mom loved Barbara Streisand.
That's so funny. So those things slip through the cracks, yeah,
Yeah, because my mom
because they like
and
it.
yeah, and I remember, I don't even know who sings the song, but Betty Davis Eyes, I loved that song so much as a kid.
Like the only
But
secular
yeah,
music that you heard, you're like, I love it.
yes, it's so great.
That's so funny.
I know, and so I just,
So very
that was just
strict
how
household. Yeah.
it was super strict. I mean, I as a teenager, and I mean, I was good. I didn't get very good grades. I wasn't a straight A student, but I was a good kid.
Your behavior was, you were well behaved and did
I
what you were
was. I
told.
mean,
And
yeah. I mean, I answered the phone. Branson residence. This is Timoree. How can I help? That's how I answered the phone when I was 10.
yeah.
So it
Wow.
was just if you're gonna answer the phone, you're gonna answer it like this. If you're gonna, I mean, it
Wow.
was, we had family dinners every night. Great. I mean, they're awesome. I love family dinners, but it was just very. And then
Formal.
my husband, it was very formal, and my
Yeah.
husband, and also too, I think that my parents, I think everything is fear driven in life, whether it's church, whether it's what we do. I think we're a fear based society. That's just my personal opinion. I think my parents were afraid, that I wasn't going to end up okay, or that I was going to get hurt or do something wrong, or yeah, I mean, I just,
it was their way of protecting you by training, by being so strict and controlling everything to try to make sure that you were prepared for the world.
Yeah, train them up in the way they should go and then will not depart from it. Like that.
Yeah.
I heard that Bible verse all the time. And I remember I met my husband when I was a senior in high school, and I met my next door neighbors. They were in junior college, and I went with them to like a college party. And I remember hearing later from my friend's mom that my stepdad was just beside himself. And she said, I couldn't believe that my stepdad said, we did not train her this way. Like, he actually used that word, that we did not train her to behave this way. So my parents were like just beside themselves.
Because you'd gone to a college party?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't drink or anything, but like that I had gone. And my husband is 8 years older than me, so I was 17, he was 25. I understand now as an adult, like that's a large age difference.
Yeah.
And my parents came, they just said, I followed all of their rules. Like they said, we were not, for the first 30 days of our relationship, we were not allowed to go be alone, be anywhere alone. We could not. So he just came over and got to know my family. He came over and had dinner with us, would come over and watch VHS tapes, and then after 30 days, then we were allowed twice a month to go on a date.
Whoa.
And then after 60, yeah. I mean, I followed all the rules.
Boy, was that more your stepdad, or was that just your mom and your stepdad together, just being
my mom and my stepdad together?
Yeah,
and they
okay.
thought that I wasn't, that this wasn't going to be a relationship that was going to last. So maybe that's why they put strict rules on it. But I think I wrote to you in one of the emails, like that when I was 15, that I prayed at at a camp that God would bring me a husband while I was still in high school, and that he would be a Christian and be older than me. And so when I met him, I was like, oh my gosh, is the answer to my prayer.
Yeah.
Like I really thought that. And he just fit. I mean, I'm really, really like grateful, lucky. I don't know, like chance was on my side, or like, I don't know. Like, yeah. I know people will listen to this and be like, that was God working in your life.
Right. They're going to say that. It's like, that makes me so mad sometimes. It's just like, you can't just say everything good is God and everything bad was not God, by default.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just like, no, like
it was your intuition. You knew that you guys had a connection. You knew that it was a good relationship, and that you would have said was God back then, or up until a year or so ago.
Yeah. I mean, I asked him the other day, and I was like, so what do you think like brought us together? Like, he's like, I'm like, luck, chance. Like, what would you call it if you couldn't say God?
And is he still Christian?
He is. Yeah. He's still a believer.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So you're asking him, okay, if you couldn't say it was God that brought us together, how would you describe it? And what did he say to that?
He said chance. And I love that. I love that. I was like, okay, I mean, it was, but I mean, I think, that 6 degrees of separation stuff. I mean, there's definitely, I loved what Joy said. That was the most recent podcast I've listened to, is that there's like so much mystery, and there is so much mystery, and there's stuff that I can't, like, I was blown away that we had a mutual friend. Like,
yeah, that was weird. That
was so weird.
Because I had looked you up, and then I was like, I saw this other person, and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I told my wife, I was like, I'm dying to know the connection there. Like, how...
I was just like, I'm like, oh, I was like, what are the odds of this? And then I was like, oh, it's a 6 degrees of separation.
Yeah, well, and then on the other side of it, you'd connected with Leah, former guest on this podcast, who mentioned the podcast to you.
Yes.
And you just randomly kind of like connected with her or whatever. Well, you know, because you're part of different groups, and so that's kind of how this stuff happens. But then the other connection was really those people that we know went to my uncle's church. They know my uncle and my family. They know my cousins who are youth pastors. I mean, when I was in my most Christian part of my life, they were a part of it. I was going to that youth group. They're my age, or a little younger, but they're about my age. And so, my wife knows them. I mean, it's insane. I haven't talked to them in years, though.
I actually just saw her not that long ago.
That's so funny.
I know.
And they're okay, yeah. And I remember what you said. They aren't necessarily living in the same area as you anymore, but they were.
No,
Yeah,
they were. Yeah. No,
yeah.
they were my kids' youth pastors.
Wow, that is so crazy.
It is. I threw her a baby shower.
It's just nuts.
I mean, that's kind of like the mystery thing of like saying like, "Oh, I'm going to be all right. I'm going to be all right."
That's
Those connect
cool. Yeah. So it gives you
like
some comfort knowing that sometimes these connections happen or these mysteries are there or what.
yeah.
Maybe explain
Yeah,
what you
it's
mean.
kind of just like just that everything is exactly as it's supposed to be. I mean, at the time, I don't know. I just think it is beyond me, you know, but
Mm-hmm.
I think I do believe in the 6 degrees of separation. I mean, you know, but I also too,
Yeah.
like, I don't think I would have ever known we would have never made that connection if I hadn't said like, "Hey, thanks so much for your podcast."
Yeah.
Because I found you guys and like probably because I was listening to a couple other ones that were just really very intense,
Oh, okay.
very intense. And so
Yeah.
like stuff was so my deconversion was happening, but I didn't have vocabulary. I didn't know
Mm.
what was happening, right?
Yeah,
Something was
none of us
happening, but
did.
I didn't know what was happening. And so um so I'm in a recovery program and um 12-step recovery, and we do
Mm-hmm.
talk about a higher power, and we have these 12 steps, and it's really been awesome for me in adult life to
Mm-hmm.
like to examine my life and examine. And I had lots of resentments. I had resentments towards my parents, towards the church, um toward pastors and my youth pastor. And um I was really able to like work through that stuff and still have, at the still go to church, believe in God, believe in Jesus, believe in absolute healing, believe when you tithe there is a return, that miracles will take place. Like, I mean, I went to Patricia King events. Like, have you ever? Do you know her,
Church
Patricia
of
King?
you said Church of King. I don't think I know that one.
Patricia King.
Oh,
She's
Patricia King.
really
Sorry.
Patricia King.
I
No,
didn't
it's
hear it
okay.
right.
Patricia King. So she has like this ministry. It's really like it's super charismatic
Okay.
prophecy, like I mean, you know, like at one of her events, I felt like when I heard this guy speak that if I were to touch him, I would be healed from my mental illness, and I did that, and I felt like I was healed. But come to find out, I wasn't, which was devastating.
And you were still a
Um,
Christian when you had the realization that that you weren't healed
yeah, I mean that was at the beginning of the
of
end for
everything.
me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, because I mean, I don't want to say like, oh, I was searching to find an answer, but like I was those last, you know, 3 years before I came
Mm-hmm.
out of everything. I mean, we were church all the time. I mean, I was at church every Sunday. My husband and I were volunteering every Sunday.
Mm.
I was helping with the women's Bible study weekly.
Yeah.
Um, our little one still says to me when we drive by our old church, why don't we go there anymore? And I'll say, oh, because I went back to work. That's what I tell her. Because I went back to work
Yeah.
full time, and so we don't go there during the week. But I mean, I was there
All the
all the
time.
time.
So she
I was
remembers
there.
that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. She remembers. I mean, she was dedicated there. Like,
And how old is
yeah.
she
It
now?
was just. She's 4.
4.
She's 4.
That's really
Yeah.
cute. Yeah. So their world is very simple and it's very much
Yeah.
like I've been there a lot. Why am I not there anymore?
Well, yeah. I mean,
But they
just the other
accept your
day,
answers too, which is good.
she just said, oh, a friend of mine passed away, and I went to her service on Sunday, and so it's interesting talking to a child about, she said, where are you going? And I said, I'm going to a service. And what kind of service? And I said, my husband chimed in and said, oh, she's going to a service to celebrate someone's life. And what happened, and I'm just like, oh, I'm like, well, she died. And she said, why did she die? And, she just goes,
Wow. Yeah, they don't stop. Yeah, with the questions.
they just don't stop. So I was just like,
That's a hard
yeah.
conversation.
Yeah. And so
how did you navigate that? Because I think that's a hard thing for someone who's just deconverted.
I just told her, I told her that my friend got very sick and that she got very sick, had some surgeries, and the doctors found more illness in her body, and that she was so sick that her body couldn't recover. And then she said, oh, did she have bloody poop? And I said, yes, she had bloody poop. So we talk about, like, when you have a little one, you talk about poop.
Yeah, that stuff comes up.
And I actually so she knows if we have bloody poop that it's very bad, that you can die if you have bloody poop. So
that came to her mind first thing when you're talking about all this.
Yeah. She's like, did she have bloody poop? I said, yes, she did. She said, okay. And that was the end of it.
That's so funny. My, I don't know if you've heard this story. I've mentioned it maybe once or twice since I've had the podcast, but my son, I had just deconverted. My wife, I think, was on that path she either had recently right after that, or she was kind of it was in that time of our life. Mm-hmm. And her dad passed away when she was really like a teenager. And so somehow it came up that her dad had passed away. And then my son, Ryan, was maybe 4, similar age. And, and he asked, well, where'd he go, or what happened? And my wife just instinctively said, he's in heaven. And I was like signaling to her, no, once we say that, then that becomes the expectation that it'll all be better, but at the same time, it was excruciating to me to not have an answer for my child, because that was my answer, even a year or two before, and I
want to
so
say I want to say my I don't know where my friend is, but I do believe in physics, and energy can't change. So I believe that she is here.
Will always be a part of the atmosphere, the earth.
Yes.
She's
I'm just that's really, because
there is some beauty in that.
In her service, it was absolutely gorgeous. She was Jewish, and it was just absolutely breathtaking. It was beautiful. It was honoring to her life.
That's so cool.
And it was just amazing. And I cried at the beauty of her life, at the beauty of where we were. It's beautiful here in Arizona right now. So for a while I was with church and other people's religions, really oh my gosh, upset. And I don't know if you know Brian Peck.
Yes.
I follow his little blips on Instagram have helped me process so much. So he's a secular therapist who helps people with religious indoctrination, I believe.
Yeah.
But he said, we can, and this helped me so much, is we can just say it stopped working for me. And this is, Christianity just doesn't work. Evangelical Christianity does not work for me anymore. It just doesn't. I don't think, I even tried a very extremely progressive church, and that doesn't even work for me. I'm it just doesn't sit well. It's so weird, because when I hear God, I think of the Trinity. Mm-hmm. When I hear, and so some people are out there and they think of God, they don't even think of it as a human,
you have
person.
A different concept of what God is.
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple things I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
First of all, you had mentioned a lot about how strict your upbringing was, and how the impression I'm getting is Christianity was, you walked right into it. It was set out for you. Your parents raised you that way. And you went even to Christian schooling, Christian high school. So it got me thinking, how were you internalizing all of this? How would you have described your relationship to God? So would you have said you had a personal relationship with him? Maybe describe that for me. Like, as you grew older, how did your faith mature?
Um, well, I had a personal relationship with Christ. I mean, I was a Christian. I mean, I remember handing out tracts and on, on a choir tour, um, actually knocking on people's doors, witnessing, um, and handing out tracts like in Santa Cruz. Um, I mean, it was like, I think I actually still have a track in an old box somewhere.
That's funny.
Yeah. Like I was,
You had internalized it. It was a part of your life. It was who you
it
were.
was, I was a child of God, and I was like, and Jesus was my savior, and he was my hope and my future, and everything, almost everything I did in my life was, you know, my whole thought process. I mean, that's kind of one of the things being older. I'm 46, being older and thinking like, um, a, like if I'm anxious or if I'm going through something, my first instinct is to pray,
Yeah.
like, because I've done it for my
Your
whole
whole
life.
life. Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a second, you don't do that anymore. I'm like, okay, so now what? Like, and really like, so now what? What do you do?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I just cry, like, and I do a lot of like deep breathing and just like try and get quiet. And so what I always thought was like God's voice was really my intuition.
Yeah.
And I think I got that language from you. So thank you
Oh,
for
cool.
helping me with that. Well, and that's the thing. Like, I mean, I grew up thinking I'm totally depraved and I'm nothing without Christ, original sin, that whole thing. Like and so that was really hard for me when I started making some poor decisions in my 20s, after I had children.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, and like that I was a sinner, but then I believed in forgiveness, and um, so yeah, I mean, I was like, and I mean, how I got out of where I was, I would have said everything that was good, I always gave credit to God,
Yeah.
everything, and everything bad that happened in my life was because of sin, generational sin. I mean, I don't think I wrote this to you in my email, but I even like went to deliverance sessions because I was so horrible.
Oh,
Like, and I
wow.
wanted to, like,
Wow.
yeah. I mean, I wanted to, I thought demons were tied to my mental illness, to promiscuity, whatever. Like, it's all just madness. It's just madness.
The thing that for me, and I want to know what you think of this, but uh, it takes something that is a difficult life circumstance and it makes it not a choice you made, but it makes it who you are. It's like
Hmm.
you have to be delivered from the demon of this or the demon of that, and you're
Yeah.
bad, you're sinful, it's your
Yeah.
fault. Like it's part of
Yeah.
you. Whereas
Yeah.
in the secular world, it's a thing that people do, and some people go through these things,
Yeah.
and there's a way out, but
Yeah.
you're not intrinsically the problem. I don't know.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Like having gone through some of those things, like, did you
I just,
internalize it that way?
yeah, I mean, I felt like I was bad, that I was like such a sinner, that I was terrible human being. But I remember, so we'll just keep a long story short. I um, got addicted to drugs and alcohol in my 20s, um, cheated on my husband, and I actually left my husband and three kids and moved to not a great part of town just to, I thought I had gotten married young, that they were holding me back, whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
in reality, I was an alcoholic and a drug addict, and just was making really poor choices, right? But I'm thinking like I'm totally bad. So good news is I have a moment of clarity. I call my friend, I call my mom, I get out of where I'm at. Um, my friend is so afraid for my safety that she takes me on a mission trip to Mexico. Um, and just well, because I couldn't get into a treatment facility right away, and she thought that if I was in town that I would go back, and I
And she
probably would
might be
have.
right, yeah.
And so and then during that time I was away, my husband actually got a lawyer, had papers drawn, and but then I asked for help, and I decided I also suffered with an eating disorder, so I ended up going to a Christian facility. But I remember my husband taking me back and him forgiving me, and that was just a moment that like, and my friend was like, I can't believe you're going to go to church to like, because it was like around Christmas and I was going to go to this thing at church. And I was like, I said, I only have to answer to two people, to God and to my husband, and they've both forgiven me. So the rest of that is on them. So at least I
Yeah.
had some awareness of like, this is nobody's business but my own and my
She
husband's.
was worried about how people would look down on you.
Absolutely. And they did. I mean,
Yeah.
they did. And they, whatever, like that's on them. Like this is my life. And my husband and I did reconcile. But the sad thing is like today, I mean, that was like 18 years ago. So today I can really look back on that and see what an amazing human being my husband is. Like he is so kind and so loving, and like that is what amazes me. And before it was like, oh, it was all God, God saved me, and like da 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 da
Yeah, your
da.
husband deserves
Well,
the full credit for that forgiveness
absolutely,
piece. Yeah.
absolutely. Like that's I just I can't even I'm amazed at um how kind he is. He is just so loving and so kind. And like, honestly, I can say in the last 18 years, not once has he ever brought it up. Not once,
Wow.
not once.
That
And
is
I'm
pretty
not,
remarkable.
and of course, like, he's just amazing. He's so, I'm so, and I hate, like, I still have a lot of the Christianese language.
Christianese.
Like,
That's good. I've never heard that before. I like that.
oh, it's like so, like, I want to say like blessed, but I'm going to use fortunate.
Yeah.
I'm so fortunate that I have a partner in life that is amazing as my husband. Like he is just a gem. He is a gem.
Yeah, I'm blown
Like
away by people like that. I just think there's some people are just born with such a compassionate um here I go, spirit about them.
yeah,
Spirit, whatever.
essence,
Essence,
essence.
perfect. Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Some people are just born with just such a compassionate essence about them. Um, and I would actually say I think about my wife in this way. Like they just like it's just amazing because I know there's so many people out there that probably would have brought that up over and over and over again just to
Oh yeah,
just for whatever reason. But
yeah,
the people who are like your husband, those are just great people, and
yeah,
they can teach all of us such great lessons
yeah.
about humanity, forgiveness, and just
Yes,
standing by
I
people in your
totally agree.
life. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
cool.
like he's just amazing. Like he's just so awesome. Like I'm so fortunate, lucky. Like all the
Well,
all those.
and you're going through something right now with the deconversion, or have been going through this,
Hmm.
and I'm curious how has he responded to that?
Um,
Because you,
he's sad.
yeah,
He's sad.
yeah,
He's sad. There was one day I was talking and I could tell he was upset. And I was like, "Are you okay?" And he didn't say anything. And I like put my hands on his arms and I said, "Have I changed? Have I changed? Like, I love you." I said, "The only thing that is different about me is I don't believe in the same God that you do. That's it." I said, "I'm the same." And he's like, "Okay, okay." Like, so I think it can be scary for all of the people around us. Like my son did not take it well.
mm,
Um,
And
like,
and I don't remember if we mentioned, but he, on or off there, but he is a youth pastor.
yes, he is
Okay.
a junior. He's a junior high
So
director,
this
youth
is his
pastor.
life as it was your
His
life. And so for
yeah,
him to
so
hear
his
this,
yeah, so he there was actually a family like blowout, and he and my youngest were there was just a it was a family blowout. It was
mm-hmm,
very sad, and like my youngest daughter was having a heart, not the 4-year-old, but the 4-year-old is my granddaughter. We'll go through that a little bit, but
mm-hmm.
my 22-year-old, she was just sobbing, and this was last March, so March of 2018, and this was the first time like I said it in front of to my son, and I was like, this is why I don't believe in your God. I just can't, because my daughter was just beside herself and sobbing.
Oh, wow.
And my son, like, he's almost 6 feet tall. His face was in his hands, sobbing, just like
Oh,
guttural sobs. He said, I'm just so worried about your salvation. And I just said to him, do you believe in once saved, always saved? And he said, yes. And I said, then I'm good. I'm good. You know, and that's all my son and I have been able to talk about in the last year.
is the
That's
once.
that one time, like, we've been unable to have, a lot has happened in our family. He got married last May. Um, there was a big thing at his church. Who was the head pastor of his church was my
Mm-hmm.
youth pastor. And I mean, it's public knowledge, so I can say it on here, but there's a case against him right now. I don't know the right words to use. I guess it was sometime in April, so it was right before my son's wedding. There are sexual charges being brought against him.
Okay. And he was your
So
youth
there's a whole
pastor. He was your
He
youth
was my
pastor. He
youth.
was the pastor of your son's church. So there's
Yeah,
a lot
he's
of
no. I
history in
mean,
your family with this.
yeah,
Yeah.
with this, but he's no
Yeah.
longer the. Obviously,
There.
he's no longer he's no longer
Yeah.
there. He's no longer the pastor, whatever. And so it's just interesting how my life has out like that. When that all came out, and I heard the story, I saw the news article. I was like really okay. Like, I didn't have any feelings towards this guy because I had, like I said, I've done some step work on it, and like I had really let go of my resentments, and I was all right.
Yeah.
Like I felt terrible for the aftermath from everybody, from all of the kids that have ever been in his youth group, um, under his leadership,
Yeah.
but that's a whole other podcast, a whole other thing. But it's just been
Yeah.
interesting, like that's my deconversion was happening at the same time as all this other stuff was happening. And it's like, my son's life really works for him right now. And I'm so proud of him. And I'm so happy that
Yeah.
he lives his life full of meaning and purpose. And that's great. Like, it's not my job to be like, hey, like,
Right.
you know, every one of us has our own journey. And I'm glad I'm on my journey and he's on his journey. But it's been very, like, it's been hard.
So
Like,
you said it's the only thing you guys can talk about. So when you say that, you mean your
well,
deconversion or that moment when he had his
that
hands in
moment is
his head in his
that
hands?
that moment is the only time that we've ever spoken about my deconversion.
Okay.
We have not spoken about it since, and that was last March of
Yeah.
18. So like we just
It's
don't. I
that
mean, he got
painful.
married.
Yeah.
It is that painful, but also too, like, I don't think he's going to understand. I don't think I think he's already so sad about it.
Yeah.
I think that there's more to relationships than what people believe in. That what they're,
Yes.
like, that there's so much more. Like, I want to know about how his job is, how his wife is, and her new job, and, like,
Yeah.
is he going to get his master's? Like, all that that's, they were thinking, they've been looking into buying a house. Like there's so much more. And then we've got, you know, our family, like, he's got an older sister and a younger sister and a niece. And like, so there's so much other things in life that we can
Right.
talk about other than like, hey, like I did want to share this. I did go to church on Christmas Eve. I
Oh,
did.
I remember in our emails you were saying that you were really excited because you didn't have to do all the churchy stuff or the Christian stuff. So I'm curious to hear how that went. And
Oh, it was so great. Like it was so great. I was It was wonderful. It was an enjoyable time. Like it was enjoyable. It was, like it was funny because so they had a live nativity, and baby Jesus was a baby that I knew, and then baby Jesus's dad was singing a song, and it was very beautiful, and I like started crying, and I like freaked out because I was crying. Like I was having an emotional response, and
mm,
I took a deep breath, and I was like, don't forget, you cry at Hallmark movies. Like every single Hallmark movie I watch, I cry. And so I'm having an emotional response to something. And it is a sweet, precious story. It doesn't mean it's true. It doesn't mean it happened.
it can still
Like,
have meaning, right? Or it can
yeah,
still be a wonderful thing, but not be true.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was like, you're okay. Like I was patting myself on the back. I'm like, you're okay. You're okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it was really so it's really strange to like go. I don't think I could have done it. I didn't go on Easter last year. I don't think I could have, like,
Yeah.
too early. But I keep telling myself, like, you're okay. You're going to be okay. It's not the end of the world. But then there are times at night when I'll lay in bed and, and cry and think, I like literally think, I wish I could go back. I wish I could go back. But it's kind of like you can't go back. Once the lens comes out or the stuff just starts to crumble, like you can't rebuild it. You just literally, there's nothing to rebuild. Like there's nothing.
And
Like I haven't, so my husband knows, my best friend knows, my mom knows, and she's always like, she's so funny. She's like, are you really don't believe in Jesus? Do you really just don't believe in Jesus? And I was like, Mom, it's all right. Like it's fine.
that's so funny. I know other
So,
people's parents who have done that. They just keep asking, like, are you sure? Are you sure? You know?
and I'm like, and I can't even say like, oh, what do I think? Like, what would I say I am, right? Because I know you asked that question.
Oh,
Like,
yeah. And I didn't even ask it this time. That's so funny. I totally forgot. Yeah. So what would you.
so I was
I'm off
like
my game
thinking, like,
tonight.
what? I was like, what? I'm not super comfortable with atheists. It's so funny because I was having this conversation in my head. I was like,
Well, it's a
I
good
know
one to
what I,
have. Yeah.
yeah, I'm like, I know what I don't believe in. I know I don't believe in evangelical Christianity. I don't, I, but I don't know. I don't know if Max was on one of your podcasts. I don't know her last name.
I don't think so.
Maybe she was okay. But she said apostate, and I was like, ooh, I like that apostate. Um,
That's
but
funny.
I would say agnostic. I'm more agnostic atheist. Like I'm really, and so it's so funny because like this September, so where are we? February. So this last fall, I remember talking to my best friend, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm landing in. I was like, I'm spinning out there, and I'm like, I'm gonna go into the land of probably atheism.
Uh
Just like
huh. It's the slow.
it's it's like I'm like, oh my gosh, and it's okay. Like it really is okay. It doesn't even really. I mean, it does matter because it was my life for 45 years.
Yeah.
It was like,
But it's your
I mean,
journey, and it's okay that it
yeah,
went this way.
yeah. So I would say I'm agnostic because I do. I'll tell you. I'm gonna tell you about an experience I had that this is kind of. So I would pray on my knees, like literally on my knees when the process began, and so this was in the fall of 2017. Every day, I would get on my knees and pray and ask God for like to help me
Yeah.
through this process or my life because I was really just in such turmoil. And if I forgot to do it in the house, I would do it when I got out to my car in the morning, which so I would get on my knees on the concrete sidewalk and pray.
Wow.
I mean, this is like I was
Desperate. Yeah.
desperate. And I remember being like, I don't believe I got up and I was like, I was in my car and it was dark because it was like 6:15 in the morning. And I remember slamming my hands on the steering wheel, being like, I don't believe in God. Like, just like, I don't believe it. Like, and then I looked up and I saw the moon. And I was like, well, I can't do that. So that's all I believe in, is because I can't put the moon in the sky. And that's what I like. I don't even know what that is, but I know that like it's not me. Like, I can't do that. I believe in I don't even like to say power greater than myself, but anything bigger than me could be this podcast is bigger than me. Like, my friends, I don't know, like, but but the God, like that day, I mean, I can still feel the cold, like, cement sidewalk underneath my knees. And that feeling of like, I don't believe in God.
So
Like the
you
God,
had, like, not everybody has moments like this, but you had this moment where it kind of hit you like it's over.
like yeah. But then of course I'm like, I don't want it to be over. I don't want it to be over. Right. But it really was. It was just over. And so like, um, so I do not daily, but I'll be like, I'll acknowledge the moon and recognize that there is a power greater than myself. And that's it. Like and it sounds so cheesy and weird and like,
Yeah, but
but
it's
that's as,
your process.
yeah, I mean, I think but I think too, like more learning about science, and I started to read The God Delusion, but that was a little bit too heavy for me.
Okay, yeah.
Like, because I was doing that like at the beginning, and I was like, oh, I gotta hold up the reins.
Yeah,
Like, I just
maybe
gotta
like
like,
Marlene Wynell, you were mentioning her. I mean, she seems like a great person for someone who's like
yeah.
kind of where you're at. You know what I
Well,
mean?
and
Like, I think she gives you a soft place to land, you know?
yeah, well, I think you have given me like a much softer place to land than where I was listening to your story and the questions that you ask people. You're just asking us your story, but I was just like, if you if you're okay and you've been okay for years,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm gonna be okay. Like, but
Yeah.
I know that it's kind of like one of those. Did you ever feel like sometimes I have panic, like, uh, like you can't go back, even though you want to go back, but you just can't go back, and
Yeah, I
like
wanted to go back for a long time. I mean, I wanted, like, there was sort of it's all I knew. It was kind of my comfort, you know, but I knew what I had learned, and so I knew there was no going back because I knew what was true
right.
at a certain point. But like, oh man, I mentioned it before that I was planning to be a pastor, so I for a short period of time really gave some thought to, do I just fake it? Like, not in a I want to trick and deceive people kind of way, but like, I'm going to end up going off this cliff, so it'd be better just to fake it and
Mm-hmm.
go along and have my career play out the way it was supposed to, and raise my
Yeah.
family and just go along with it. But then at the end of the day, I couldn't do it. Not
Yeah.
that that's bad if people do, because I know people out there who are doing it.
I just
um
can't.
it's just, we are all faced with this impossible choice of having to decide, like, how do we process this? And you want to go back, but you can't.
But I definitely think, honestly, for me, it has been more painful to go through this process and to live in absolute reality than to go back to church and be like, like be in an emotional atmosphere, where you feel good. It's really deceiving, really. Like,
Hmm.
it's when you live in reality of like, okay, you're going through this, it's up to me to make, good choices or bad choices, or be happy, or I mean, I don't know about be happy and be sad, but like, it is literally up to me. Like, there isn't like, I'm the only one that's going to save me. God is not going to come save me. Like, he's not going to come heal me. He's not going to come heal my daughter. You know, like, he's not. It is me, and it's me asking for help from my family, my friends, to help me go through difficult processes. But I think in deconversion process, when your whole world is surrounded by believers and everyone is ready to like pray, to ask God to come in and intervene on your behalf,
Yeah.
it's when you don't have that, it's like a deafening silence almost. Like
Yeah.
you're just,
Deafening
it's a
silence.
it is. It's just like, it is just me. And it's like, and
It's hard
it's
to
my
come to
husband.
grips with that. Yeah.
And it is painful to live in reality. I wish that I loved Joy's, you know, the rose colored glasses.
Yeah.
Um, like it would be great. I mean, to, but on the other hand, living in the present, it's intense and it's beautiful. Um, you know, we have the privilege of raising our granddaughter, and to see like life through a child again is amazing. And you know, the simple questions that she asks, and just like, oh, look at this, or I want to tell you something. And it's like being present and doing things with her or with my husband or with my daughter or with my friends, like those moments have so much more meaning to me now
Oh man.
than they ever did before.
That's a great point. I love that because I feel like that's true for me. You know, I start to really see life as we got one shot here. This is you get
Hmm.
one chance to live it out and do the best you can with
Hmm.
what you have and what you're
Yeah.
born into. And so those family get-togethers or those moments when you're enjoying a sunset. I mean, everything. You know, like your
Everything.
granddaughter. I mean, enjoying those moments, they become
Yeah.
so much more precious, and you just want to live in those moments even more.
Hmm. Yeah. I had a conversation with her about, we have lots of conversations, but I had a conversation with her about a year ago, because she was 3, and she was saying something about so and so in her class was bad, and I was like, oh no, no. I said, maybe he just wasn't listening and like, you know, making poor choices, but he's good. You know, there is good inside everyone.
Yeah.
And she just looked at me and her eyes just got big. And I said, yes, there is good in everyone. Everyone is good. And so it's really cool to parent now in a different perspective of like, you know, you're good.
Yeah, you
Like
didn't
you're
need to
just good.
tell her about Jesus to get across the point
No.
that good is in every person.
Yeah.
You were just
Like
able to
it's
tell
in
her.
everyone. Yeah. And I'm trying to think if there was something else I wanted to. So like on my journey of like figuring stuff out.
I was gonna ask you because it's been great. I've loved our conversation, but I don't want to miss anything. And I one of the things I wanted to ask you about was kind of leading up to that moment. So leading up to
Okay.
leading up to the the preceding months or preceding years. What
Yeah.
were some things that were going on? But if you're gonna forget what you're gonna say, maybe I
No,
don't know if it was along
it's
those
that.
lines. Okay, yeah,
It
yeah.
was along those lines. So when our granddaughter was born, that was in 2014, and it was just really awesome. And it was about, and that's when I got super involved in church and serving. You know, I mean, I probably served more hours than I was sitting in a service.
You said that was 2014. So
2014, yeah.
granddaughter's born. You're getting really
Hmm.
involved in the church.
Super involved. Now, our daughter was 17 when she had her, and knew that she was too young to be a parent. So my husband and I are our granddaughter's parents. Um, and my daughter has suffered with some mental illness as well as I have, and but I just, you know, was praying every week. I was tithing. Um, I was fasting for a miracle in her life, and for God to heal her. I really believe that God would heal her. And I I felt like God had quote unquote healed me in 2012, and so I was not on any medication at the time. So for about 2 years, it was quite, I mean, life was good, and you know, um, there was lots of ups and downs. Our daughter had to be hospitalized, but I still had hope that God was going to heal her. And we were in San Diego on a family vacation, and my daughter had an episode, and it was really, really traumatic and sad. And I remember there was a moment there, and I call it when the fracture. So this is when the fracture in my foundation of all of my beliefs took place. And it was in June of, I guess it was 2016, June of 2016. This was when the fracture, like the first
Big
hit.
crack.
Yeah. And I realized that it was just me and my daughter, and there was no God. It was just me and my daughter. And then I started, of course, I did what I do, and I, listened to more CDs went to more church services and all this stuff. And
Yeah,
it
you kind of
just,
double down on faith. A lot of people do that.
oh yeah. I mean, I was just like, this is gonna, and then it just, I mean, and I kept I went to big women's conferences, and just saw the likes of Christine Kane and Carl Lentz and Hillsong Music and blah, all this stuff. And it just was falling flat. And then, was it, maybe I have my time. Wait, it's 2019. Yeah. So it was a year. Okay. So no, it was 2017.
So June of 2017 was when you had this realization about your daughter. And
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that it was just me and her, and God wasn't there. But then of course, oh no, God was in me. It was the divine in me, blah, blah, blah. Of course I had even though God was there, but God was there because God was in me. That was
kind of
so
progressive thought, or your thoughts are kind of evolving.
Yeah, they're evolving. And then I was also later that summer, I was taking care of my dad, who I've kept a relationship with. And my dad lived in California my whole life, pretty much. And so I have my own internal issues with my father or whatever. And, that's saying well, what if, you think of God as your father, and it's so good, and all this stuff. And I really started questioning honestly, I started questioning the goodness of God. That's where I started, and everything that they say in the Bible that God created. And then I was like, well, if God created everything, and if God is so good, then he obviously created evil and bad. It just makes sense. And so this is where I'm reading the Bible daily, listening to, I only listen to worship music. I mean, only listen to worship music.
You're doing everything any Christian would think to do in a moment that. That's what every Christian would do. Yeah.
I mean, I was exhausted, just exhausted. And then I had to go back for financial reasons. I had to go back to work full time. And I was really mad about that. And then I was just all of this stuff
was going on.
All this stuff was going on. And I was none of it's not, I just felt so, overwhelmed with everything. It was, I was away from my granddaughter. I was at a new job. There was all these things, and I was doing and then, I had my hormones checked to make sure, I had my hormones checked. And then I was in such a deep depression. I mean, I was literally fighting to stay alive daily. And I went back on medication, and I knew that it was going to take 12 weeks to uptake on this medication. And I was just
That
telling myself
sucks, by
every
the
day.
way, waiting for medication to start you're just thinking like,
And
I can't make it.
I was like, I basically was ticking off the weeks, like, just like, you can do this, like, you'll be all right, you'll be all right.
Yeah, day by day.
And, but that was the whole time. Those were the days where I was on my knees. Like, I literally
Pleading
was
God.
just, and then it was just like, nope. Like, the first time I said it out loud was a year ago, February of 18, was like, I don't think I believe in God anymore. And I was kind of scared because, like, right, my whole world is church, and the other part of my world is 12-step recovery program,
Mm-hmm.
where it's a spiritual solution. So I'm freaking out that I'm not going to stay sober, freaking out I don't have this relationship with God,
Mm-hmm.
as like Jesus, the Alpha, the Omega, the great physician. I mean, like, all this stuff. Like, it was
It has implications in every little part of your life.
everything.
Yeah.
Everything. Like, I don't have enough faith. I'm not believing enough. I didn't believe that God healed me, so therefore I'm not healed. Like, it was just so sad. Like, it was just so, I couldn't believe that this was happening. That
Yeah.
I couldn't stop it from happening either. Like, I was completely coming undone. Like, and
Wow.
I was so scared too, because I'm scared if I don't believe in a higher power that I'm not going to stay sober. I'm afraid, like, something's going to happen to my marriage. I'm afraid I'm not going to have a relationship with my son. I'm afraid of reality. I'm
Yeah.
afraid of reality, of true reality, of, like, what's happening. And I just was like, I just can't. And I even went to a therapist, and I didn't know to find a secular therapist that specializes in trauma or religious trauma. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know that. So it was the saddest therapy appointment I've ever been to my whole life. She just, like, she did not help me at all. And
She
I was
had no
like, this
idea
is
how to
not
help
working.
you.
She had no idea. And it's okay. Like, people just don't. You have to go
Yeah.
to a therapist that knows
Mm-hmm. Or is
about.
professional enough to be able to guide you through it without injecting their
Well, I
religious
don't think that
views.
when I was saying to her, I don't think you understand. I'm having this, in Christian culture, we call it a crisis of faith, right? I'm thinking it's a crisis of faith that I'm having for what, like 6, 7, 8 months, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it's a deconversion. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't know until the spring that that it was called, that I was deconstructing my faith, that it was a
Yeah.
deconversion. Like, I didn't have that. I was like,
It's
I didn't
only
know
in
what was
looking
happening.
back that you can see that.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
I didn't have, and I had no idea. And then when all the story broke about my youth pastor, and there was a group of us on Facebook, that there was a lot of, someone gave us mentioned some podcasts, so I started listening, and that's when I started hearing language. And then I was like, oh, there's religious trauma syndrome. Is that what this is? Oh, it was called deconversion. Oh, I'm deconstructing my faith. Oh,
Oh, it's a thing. Like
it's a thing.
it's
Like,
normal. Yeah.
I literally thought I had lost my mind. I remember I wrote my friend an email telling her that I didn't have the language yet. So I told her that I had lost all hope. And I said, what I'm experiencing is worse than when I lost my mind. And I actually had a really terrible manic or bipolar episode back
Mm-hmm.
in 2011, where I lost touch with reality. And that was really scary. But this deconversion process has been more painful.
Wow.
Like, and So I don't think that we should take this lightly. Like, we need to
Um,
be talking with people. We need to be seeking out help. We need to be, like, have good conversations of, like, you know, coping skills. Like, I didn't have any coping skills. I knew how to pray. Like, I knew how to pray. I got on my knees,
yeah, but you're
but
right.
I didn't
Coping
know
skills
how.
is a big piece of this. We've learned to be dependent on God and like codependent on God. And
Yeah.
so then I think Cass Midgley mentioned it in when I was talking to him, is that it sounds like I don't know. It doesn't maybe sound right, but self-soothing. You know what I mean? Like we've learned like
Yeah.
how to or we hadn't learned how to do that. We hadn't learned how to calm ourselves.
Hmm.
We hadn't learned those breathing
Right.
techniques or to call a friend, or we hadn't learned
Yeah.
those things. We always, the first thought was pray, go to God, go to
Go
church.
to God. Yeah. Or, for me, like, all stuff was coming out sideways when I was 12 with an eating disorder. So it's like, there's like, now I will write, which I'm not like, don't really like writing. Oh, the one thing that was really traumatic for me is I couldn't listen to worship music. It was so
Yeah.
I know that sounds really like
No, but
lame.
it's an emotional experience, especially if it's like a charismatic kind of worship
Yeah.
music, like Hillsong. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
I was really into back in the day, like when I was in high school and stuff.
Yeah.
And that it brings out your emotions. It's just so it's the music's powerful in a sense. It really
Yeah.
can make you feel. Yeah.
Like, I was actually freaking out because I am an auditory person, and so, like, music was a huge part of my life, worship music especially. And I was like, I couldn't listen to music, and I pretty much had enough of, like, the top 40 on the radio, and it was just kind of like, what do I listen to? And then I saw The Greatest Showman a year ago, and that soundtrack literally, I don't want to say it saved my life, but it pretty much did. It was something so that was a tool I used before. So this was
That's
me
cool.
before podcasts. was
That's
Listening
cool. I
to The
love
Greatest.
hearing about what people use. I always ask for a resource, and I think this is a really unique one that people wouldn't think of, but I think it's a great one.
Like, the soundtrack to The Greatest Showman, like, it's powerful. It's I it helped me because I literally I couldn't listen to anything except that. And
And that's
maybe
is that a musical or a movie?
it is a musical and a movie. It's a
Okay.
great,
Yeah, yeah. With
it's,
what's his name? The Australian guy.
Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so,
Cool.
but there's a song, and it talks about coming alive, and that you can't go back. I mean, it was very, I could relate to the music quite a bit.
That's
And
awesome.
so, and then I heard the podcast. So the podcasts have helped. I do a lot of writing, deep breathing, also do some tapping, like, which is to help ground me,
Mm-hmm.
like, to stay in my body,
Yeah,
like,
I've heard of that type of thing.
yeah.
Like
But
people with
and that,
anxiety will do like at work they would do like these special trainings where they would
yeah.
show us like these different taps or different things
Hmm.
you can do, physical things that will kind of ground
Hmm.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, yeah. And so then I guess it was like last May that I started listening to podcasts, and then I started listening to you in August. So
Wow,
after
that's cool.
the connection with Olive Poetry.
Yeah, that's so cool. Well,
Yeah.
what's at this point in your life and in this stage of deconversion, what's something that you think you've learned or experienced that you wouldn't have if you were still Christian?
Um, I don't want to sound like really, I, that I am really a strong person, that that I'm that I'm resilient, that I am strong. Um, and I've really been able to recognize that, like, the good in me is me,
Hmm.
and it's not coming from God or Jesus or the gifts of the Holy Spirit. Like, it's me. Like, um, I don't know if I'm answering your question right,
You're
but
doing perfect. Yeah, like you're strong. You're the one that has
yeah,
like the
like,
ability to change your life for the better. All by
Like it's,
yourself.
yeah, like, yeah, it's me. Like it's me. It's not like it is me, but also with the help of like, a loving husband
Sure.
who has allowed me just to given me breathing room to process. Um,
Mm-hmm.
my best friend who will I could talk to for 2 hours on the phone about stuff. And, we became friends in the church and she's so sweet. She's always like, how's my little atheist friend?
That's so funny. See, people
Yeah.
are great. People like that are great. Friends like that are so priceless. I mean,
Yeah. I mean,
I like the way that like you kind of said that, like it was so carefree, and I think and like almost jokingly, and it
yeah.
kind of this is serious stuff you've gone through, but it's so
Hmm.
refreshing sometimes to just have someone be like, hey, it's just life, no big deal, like
Yeah.
it's cool. Like, how's my little atheist friend doing? It's kind of nice to have that, kind of lightens the mood a bit.
Yeah. And I mean, I know that she really loves me. Like, I know that she really cares about me, that she loves me and she cares about me. And I love her and care about her. And like, we were always seemingly on the same path. And so it's been like, I had some fear that like we wouldn't be friends anymore.
Mm,
So, but she's still my friend.
that's great.
So,
Those are
but
good.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think that I've learned so much about myself, like that I am strong, that I'm resilient, that I'm capable, that I'm actually intelligent. I've learned a whole lot in this last year than I like
Well, and you're
educational wise,
yeah.
because um, I went just in life, just when I started a new job, I learned a whole new industry. Then I went back to an industry that I knew, but reading books and like the God Delusion, um, um, yeah, that one, and Marlene Winnell's book. Um, she's got some. If anybody can't buy her book, she's got some really great articles. Like if you Google religious trauma syndrome articles. She has 3 great articles that if you're just like, oh, I can't read through a whole book, it really outlines her books and it's amazing.
And she has a website. I don't know the exact name of it, but if you Google Dr. Marlene Wynell, people would find
Hmm.
it.
Yeah,
And it seems to have a lot of great resources there.
it does. I just remembered something that was really important in my
Yeah.
story that I forgot. So I think it was last February. I don't want to say it was the book that changed everything for me, but I read that book, Why Do Bad Things Happen to Good People by Harold Kushner.
Hmm.
Have you read that book?
No, but that sounds like a great book.
It is amazing. So it was written. He's a rabbi, and he talks about why bad things happen to good people, and it's his perspective. But the last part of the book, he talks about prayer, and this was kind of like the nail in the coffin, if you will. He talks about prayer and what his experience with prayer. He said that prayer is for community. He didn't really believe that it would change God's mind. The prayer was for, like, if someone was going through a difficult time and they said, will you pray with me? He didn't think that they would have power to change God's mind or to change the outcome. But the sign of prayer, praying and holding hands with someone, would give that person comfort. But it was not going to change the outcome, or that God was going to swoop in and change. And I couldn't sleep for a whole 24 hours because it just shattered everything I knew and grew up in church about prayer,
Wow.
you know?
That
And
it
I
was
was
more
just,
about comforting the person than it was
it
about
was about,
changing the
it's,
outcome.
yeah, that it's about community and it's about being there for someone of a shared faith. But I think that like we can, deep, meaningful conversations with people can be in essence like that. But honestly, it just literally was a nail in the coffin. The hammer going into the glass. I mean, it literally just shattered everything. It just was like, because I so deeply believed in prayer that God was going to come and heal and comfort and change my life. And to realize that there's no God that's going to come down and be like, I want to pay your bills for you, or let me multiply that money that you just gave, to the church, let me, like, it was that me, I was a big fasting and prayer person. So, it just like, I sobbed, couldn't sleep. And it was just like, it's over. That's when I was like, it's over. Like it was over. And I didn't know what was over. I just knew that like my belief
Things have
system
changed.
Like you literally cannot put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Yeah.
Like it's over.
Yeah, sometimes
Like,
there's no going back. But that's not always a negative thing, Like it sounds negative, and there's definitely negatives and difficult things we've talked about, but
Yeah.
It's definitely a great. It's just a significant time in life to be where you're at and to be looking forward to, kind of, I don't know, discovering everything anew. Like you're talking about, like learning so many things and discovering things about yourself and all of it.
It's a trip. It's like such a trip. I'll be like, some days be like, oh my gosh, can't believe this is happening. Like,
yeah.
And it's just me in the car, like on my way to work, or just like to experience like, hey, I did that. Like I did that.
Yeah.
Like me, I did that. Just being excited for, things in the present and celebrating these moments, like friendships. I made a new friend this year, and I just, just stuff like that, or like, having, like when I meet someone, it's not like, oh, hey, do you know Jesus?
Right. That's not in the back of your mind now. You don't have to worry about that.
No, sometimes I do think though, like I do want to ask people, like, can you tell me about your concept of God? Like,
I know.
Just because
because it's fascinating, because that's where you're at.
Right. It's fascinating because because I was like in this bubble, and yes, I grew up in the bubble and I put myself in the bubble as an adult, but like there's so much beyond, like there's stuff on YouTube, there's like books, there's, podcasts, there's just so much out there. And I was like, I can't even, like, I'm really overwhelmed. And when I found out, like, so when it was all unraveling and I realized that, God didn't create the earth in 7 days, I cried.
Wow.
I cried. It was like, and that's it has been a painful process. And that's why I like listening to you and your podcast. The questions that you ask and the people that you have on are such a variety of people and walks of life and education as well. And great. But like yours seems to me more gentle, like, okay, like more gentle, like no, seriously,
no,
yours is like,
that's good though. I mean, there's a lot of it was on purpose that I didn't make this like a really intense let's debate religion podcast. I mean, I've said it a lot lately, but there's a place for that. Those are totally important podcasts to have, and YouTube channels, and the people who do that, like, we need those people. Like, they're very important to the world, but to our kind of issue that we're going through. But yeah, I wanted this to be just a place where people could share kind of what they're going through, but also by doing that, obviously we encourage each other, and it's a big part of my process. I mean, this is like, part of this is a little selfish. Like, I am getting a lot out of hearing these stories myself, like, it helps me, so it's kind of and it's fun to connect with people and stuff. But
it is so great. It's like, sometimes I'll sit at my kitchen table and I'll be listening, I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm like talking out loud, I'm like, oh, nobody's here.
Like, it's just me.
You.
Yeah.
I'll be like, oh yeah, or like rewind. I'll be like, let me hear that again, or like, wow, just like,
well, and it's so helpful because I think you start to realize that it's something that so many other people have gone through or are going through, and like, it's almost like when you learn, oh, there's a word deconversion, oh, people talk about deconstructing their faith. Oh, these are things I'm going through. These are the names of the things. I have religious trauma syndrome. Okay, cool. Well, like someone studied it and someone knows how to work through it. I'll read that book. I mean, it's just so comforting to. It's like someone kind of says, "Okay, here's where you're at, and so because you're at this place, here are the things that you're going to be experiencing, and here are some ways that you can help yourself." I mean, such a better, I guess, experience or than it could be if you didn't discover these things, because then you're just like, I'm going crazy. I mean, that's how a lot of us felt.
I literally thought I had lost my ever-loving mind.
Yeah.
And I was like, but actually then I knew I didn't lose my mind because I was so aware. I was so aware that I was experiencing deep grief. And then I had someone was like, oh, you're going through the night, or what is it? The dark night of the soul. So then I was like researching dark night of the soul, and I'm like, it sort of sounds like this, but not really. So it's just kind of like, it was weird to hear these, dark night of the soul and, that whole.
Yeah. And I think I thought of this when you were talking. I think there's a special need for people who are not identifying, who deconvert from their religion, but are not identifying with another religion. Because I think for people like us, like, we're not landing as a Hindu, we're not landing as a Muslim, although, or Buddhist or whatever, although many of us considered other religions in our process because we're looking for somewhere else to land. But I think that's why this type of conversation is so important, is there is nowhere to land. You're at where you're at. It's a loss of something. It's not an exchanging of something. And that's where I think it becomes extra difficult. It's like when you lose a loved one, I mean, there's no replacing them, there's just coping with the reality of it. And that can be extremely hard.
Yeah. I remember, I think it was sometime in the May, June is when I finally was like, I'm just accepted. I got into a place of acceptance of this process, of whatever this process was, which is deconversion, deconstruction. As soon as I started to accept it, because I was really freaking out and kind of like fighting it, as soon as I just kind of relaxed into the journey, which felt like more like a roller coaster ride, that I was like, all right, like, just see what happens. Like, see what, it's like, let's see what happens. Like, and like, just keep listening, just keep being open, but like really seeking out truth and science. And like, I never was into science. Like, that was never but now it like fascinates me. And I love, there's this guy that I follow, on Instagram. His name is The Evolved Primate.
Okay.
And, he is recently deconverted, Christian as well. And so he's constantly posting like science stuff, which I'm like, yay, this is so great. Like, we have to teach each other stuff. Like, and we're
behind. I feel like a lot of us. Yeah.
I'm super behind. I'm 46. Like, I'm just now learning about evolution.
Yeah.
Like, and so like, I'm just, it's great. Like, I really feel extremely inadequate in life, but it's okay.
But like, there's plenty of people that will never even give it a second thought because they're going to stay Christian and evangelical, and they're just going to not believe it. So
there's lots of people that believe in I don't know. It's like, I don't know what it's called, but they believe in like evolution, creation, evolution, or something
it's like
divine,
that. I don't know. Like God started the process and let it go, kind of thing.
Oh, I don't know.
Which is weird.
It's just weird. It is just weird. Like, and that has been my turn for like the last year and a half. Like, I just feel weird. I feel weird because I don't have like language, but I'm like happy. I feel weird. I'm sad, and I do see like amazing mysteries about our connection, about, the connection, with my friend, my acquaintance friend that told me about, another podcast that led me to your podcast. Like, that's really cool. I don't know what to call it. I just think it's really cool.
Serendipitous?
Yeah. Oh yeah, you use that a lot. I like that.
I had my doctor said that to me the other day about finding like the cancer thing, like finding like how it happened. Like it was just like by chance. It just happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, that word's fresh in my head.
Yeah.
Serendipity.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
It is like, it's a lot more fun. I don't know if it's a lot more fun. It's more intense. Moments are more fun. Like, I really enjoy times with my mother, with my husband, with my granddaughter, with my children, with my friends. Like, I don't know. It's just more meaningful. And everything that I do, like, it isn't I used to always be like, I'm doing this to get a pearl in my crown. I would say that. Like, I'm going to get a jewel in my crown. Like, no, it's not that. Like, I get to choose if I want to do what I want with my life.
Yeah. So were you saying that in the sense of like, I'll do a good deed and Jesus will reward me?
Absolutely. Like, I literally, that's what.
So now when you do good, you can say, oh, it's because I have a good heart. I'm helping this person not because I care about them, just because of that.
Yeah. I mean, everything, literally everything changes. When you don't believe, when your belief system, which is Christianity, crumbles, unravels, shatters, life is just different. I remember like getting really upset, and I was like, oh, don't get mad. Don't get mad. Cause like, I don't know about being like, that it wasn't, I don't know. There's some scripture about like not being angry. Oh, like be angry, but do not sin, or, like how anyway, like,
it sounds so familiar, but it's like, now I can't remember any of the verses.
Yeah. But so I just never gave my permission to be like mad or angry. Like,
that's important to feel that. Yeah.
Like, and
let yourself experience that.
Yeah. So for the last year, I'm like, be mad. Like, be mad.
You should be mad. Anyone who is in your situation would feel mad too. It's okay to feel that and to go through that and process it, because you're not going to stay there forever. It's like the 5 stages of grief. You're going to kind of go in and out of them. And it just seems like it's part of the process.
Denial's most comfortable. No. Right?
Yeah, it kind of is. Ignorance is bliss.
It is. Like, it really is. And I
know. I think back to those moments when I was not processing what was really happening to me, and I just think like, oh, if I could have just stayed there, I would just have my career, But I also
I think too, like, I was like, what if I never read that book? If I had never read that book, like, but then I'm just like, does it really matter? I don't know. Does it?
Well, this does make life pretty exciting. I mean, this is a pretty exciting turn. I mean, the good and the bad together. Like, this is quite entertaining. I don't know. That's a bad word to use, but it's eventful. That's a better word.
It's like super eventful. Like,
incredibly eventful.
I always said, like, oh, life is so adventurous because I had my kids so close together in age. I had one in 94, 1995, and one in 1996. So, but yeah, like, I was like, life is adventurous, but like, it really is. Like, when you stop and like that phrase, stop and smell the flowers, means so much more now. Like, it is. Yeah, like, really stop, say hello to someone, smile. And not because, you want them to know Jesus or they see the light in you, like, no, just like, because kindness matters.
For its own sake. Like, it does. Yeah.
Like, to be like, well, if you don't want to, but just don't be a jerk, or, I mean, I guess you can be. I'm not going to tell you how to be, but.
To the jerks out there, we want to be sensitive to them. They can be jerks. It's okay. That's who you are.
Like, no, but like, that, but that's me. Like, that was a conversation that I usually have in my head. That just came out. But it's true. It's like, I was constantly told, like, how to be, what to say, what to wear, yeah. And, and now it's just like, be who you want to be. Like, and it's funny too, because like, a part of me, I think growing up evangelical Christian, you can't help, but you're conditioned to judge people. that's just how, and
Yeah. Even if you don't
you
want
know,
to, it just comes naturally.
well, you're just conditioned. You're that's how you're taught. That's you're conditioned.
Yeah.
It's an automatic response
Yep.
to the doctrine. It just is.
For sure.
But like now, being acceptance of humanity, I need to be real. Like for me, I need to be real careful that I'm not judgmental to the Christians.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point, and I think that's really important. That's something I had to. I don't know. I still have to tell myself that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's an important thing to keep in mind. Like you don't want to become them, or the bad part about what some of them do, or the way some of them
Right.
act.
Yeah, I
You
don't
don't want
like
to
that.
turn it on.
No.
Like it's like some atheists become fundamentalist atheists, and the way
Yeah.
I see it, and they become just as ardent and narrow-minded and blind
Yeah.
to the facts as some of these fundamentalist Christians are.
Yeah.
And you just think like you just traded one fundamentalism for another, one
Right.
extreme for another extreme. Yeah, and we
Yeah.
don't want that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, and that's like with growing up with black and white thinking, I've tried to remain more broad in my, like, where I say I'm almost landing in the land of atheism, but I probably am.
Well, and it's okay. Gosh, that brings me back to something I was going to mention a long time ago. But someone emailed me recently, and I believe, if I'm wrong, I'll feel bad. But I believe it was someone from Scotland that had been emailing me for a little bit, and they mentioned that a song that meant a lot to them. I don't remember the artist, but it was called the name of the song was "Let the Mystery Be," and it was this along the same lines of this, where it was like, just let it be. Like, why can't you just like let the mystery be? You don't have to choose a side. You don't. I mean, I ask people if they're atheist or agnostic or how they identify, but that's just that's. I think it's okay to not know. It's okay to just say like, I haven't figured it all out, and I'm not sure where I'm going to land, but I am where I am, and I'm just gonna let things kind of settle in, and just let them settle where they're at, and just not worry about having to solve it or figure it all out.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna figure it out now.
Well,
I don't have I don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
Even though I did think I did when I was a Christian.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Well, I was going to ask you, so in regard to where you're at now, it's very fresh for you, but you've gone through a huge change. And so when you think back to the most Christian version of yourself, in spite of this change, what's something about you that stayed the same, something positive about yourself that you can look back at and say, that was always true of me?
I knew you were going to ask this question.
Yeah. I like asking it. Yeah.
I know. I'm really a loving person, I think. But then I think people would be like, no, she's not. But I don't know.
This is your answer. This isn't what other people think.
But see, like I'm
true.
already,
yeah.
It's still hard to, like what has
think?
remained what I think has remained the same is that I still care about people the same way that, with Jesus and without Jesus. Like I still really care and love people, like in the same way, but with a different, but different now. It's like, it is actually more meaningful to me.
Yeah, you don't, your answer to the question, why are you that way, is different, but the fact that you're that way has always been true.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been the caretaker and cared about people and enjoyed, I'm a people person and love being with people and love talking and, having those heart-to-heart connections. And I loved it then, and I love it now, and I love that about me. I love that I love connecting with people, and can love them. And my best friend would say, like, I give lots of very positive, like, very, it's hard not to use Christian language, very much encourager. I still like the biggest cheerleader. Like, I want to be everybody's biggest cheerleader and love them.
Yeah.
So
No, that's really good. That's a good answer.
thanks. I don't know if it was the right answer. I mean, there is no right or
There's no
wrong,
right.
but it's
Yeah, it's well, that may change. I mean, you might think of something else, a month from now, a year from now, but that's
gonna be
okay.
like, email you.
Yeah.
Wait.
Wait,
No, but
wait. I need to change it. Yeah.
I mean, I do think it is that I am compassionate towards others, love humanity, loving people. But like, that's such a Christian thing to say. Like,
What, that you love people or?
yeah, like I just feel like I came out of a culture of like, we love you, Jesus loves you. But like, I really do love people. Like, and I care about humanity. Like, I am a very caring person. So we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I
We
think
can
that's good.
splice on that.
That's good. Perfect. So as you know, there are people listening right now who are just coming out of Christianity. They've just deconverted and they're feeling the way that you felt in the not too distant past. Maybe frustrated, confused, depressed, upset, everything that goes along with deconverting. What encouragement or piece of guidance would you give that person?
First, I would say you're not alone and you're going to be okay. Take some deep breaths and reach out to, if you have someone that is safe in your family or your communities. When I say safe, I mean like they will be accepting of your process. Talk to them. If you need to see a therapist, see a therapist, a secular one that understands RTS. Marlene Winnell's book is great, but cut yourself some slack. Allow yourself to just go through this process. Like, it's okay if you don't know, like, have all the answers. Like, and I just keep listening as much as you can and asking for help, reaching out, email people. Like, there are some people that I message with through Instagram. I don't know them face to face, but it's helped me in my process. Like, ask for help, but like from medical professionals, like licensed therapists or safe people in your life that can help you. Because sometimes you just need to talk, even though we don't make sense or we think we're not making sense. So
yeah, we got to process it.
Yeah.
Well, if people want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
They can contact me through email, which is my first and last name, Timoree Branson @yahoo.com. I'm on Instagram more than I am on Facebook, and my handle on Instagram is TIMOREEB. That's it, Timoree B. And you can direct message me there. I think that, and on Facebook, Timoree Branson. There's not many Timorees out there.
No, yeah, you're pretty easy to find on Facebook.
I'm sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
well,
so
Timoree, thank you for just connecting, and just there's so much that we could have talked about in addition to everything we did, and your story was amazing, and just the things you have gone through, a lot of really difficult stuff, not just deconversion, but just tough life stuff. That's tough for anybody. So one, thank you for being vulnerable and like sharing all of that, because that's sometimes it's hard to do, to talk about all of these difficult things we go through sometimes.
Yeah.
But also just for coming on the podcast and talking about your deconversion process, and it has happened so recently. It's obvious, but I can just tell, like, it's so fresh, like it's still so fresh for you. Yeah.
Yes.
But thank you. It was such a wonderful story to hear, and I really appreciate you sharing with everyone.
Well, I thank you for having me on. It's been a great experience for me, and I have loved every episode you have put out there. I love that you care about humanity, and you are making a difference, and that's really it made a difference in my life, and I'm so grateful for that. So thank you.
Thanks for listening to Voices of Deconversion. Be sure to join us next time by subscribing to the podcast.